This is an Hermes Birkin. This bag is gonna set you back at least 20 G's, and you can only carry it one way, their way, and that's by the top handle. But this is a Hermes Birkin dupe that I made myself with my bare hands at home from Babylon DIY kit. And not only does it have my special touch of my blood, sweat and tears in each stitch, but also I have more ways to wear it. It has something the original Birkin does not have, a crossbody strap. And you guys know I am a crossbody kind of girl. And best of all, you can get this kit for under $300 US. And this bag was kindly sent to me by Babylon Leather DIY Kits. It's not a sponsored video, but they did send me the kit for free. And they have also kindly gifted my viewers a discount code. So I'll put the link and the discount code right here on the screen, and it will also be down in the description box if you want to try it for yourself. And in fact, this is my third Babylon Leather DIY piece. So this was my first one. I just tried out a small bag charm first with the easier round hole kit. So this is like a dupe of the Hermes Pinkerton, but in a miniature bag charm form. Then my second piece was this Hermes Kelly dupe by Babylon DIY Leather Kit, also in the easier round hole version kit. And I was finally brave enough to try their little bit more advanced oblique hole kit. And if either of these projects interest you, I also have step-by-step instruction videos for each of these projects, which I'll link right here and also in the description box. Guys, I have someone to introduce you to. This is Gia. This is a 5-year-old poodle that I am puppy sitting. So in this video, I'm going to show you the unboxing and everything you get in there. I'll tell you all the new skills you're going to unlock by doing this DIY project. My personal tips and tricks I learned from this experience and through the mistakes that I made, so you don't have to make the same mistakes. And I've broken down the steps into 17 sections, which I'll go through one by one with you guys and hold your hand through the process. And then I'll give you my final thoughts at the end. And just as a reminder, this video does not replace the official Babylon tutorial video. They do provide you an official tutorial video which teaches you how to put it together. This is rather just a complimentary video where I show you the way that I do it, and I also show you some of the pain points and obstacles I encountered along the way and how I was able to overcome them, just in case you encounter the same obstacles. And I also show you just how I interpret the instructions they gave, because sometimes I was a little bit confused with their tutorial video. And additionally, there's no timestamps on their tutorial video, which is over an hour long. So I also give you the timestamps for each section, which matches their tutorial video, so that you can skip around on both my video and their video. So let's get straight into the unboxing. So this is how the package comes, and it does come from China. Inside the bag, they give you everything you need. The only thing you need to bring to the table is some sort of fire source, whether you want to use a lighter or matches. But otherwise, they have all the panels of this bag provided for you. You get the tools such as needles and a pair of scissors, and also they give you some bull clips to help hold panels together when you're sewing. And you also get some fun little accessories with your bag, such as these twilly scarves. There's also this little Hermes Rodeo dupe bag charm. Now, I really love these leather pins. These were gifted to me by Babylon, but you can also buy them directly from the store. I do recommend you get them. You don't have to buy them from Babylon. You can get them from like Amazon or wherever else, but I do recommend you get them. They will help a lot with the project. You also get this piece of paper which outlines what you got in your box, and also it has the QR code to take you to the relevant tutorial video for your kit. So make sure you watch their tutorial video. Now let's talk about the skills we're going to unlock by doing these leather DIY projects. And it's not just specific to this particular bag, but also just skills you can unlock even doing the more easier or simple projects. So you're going to learn really basic steps, and a lot of these steps are also the basic steps used by the real Hermes artisans that make the real Hermes Birkin bags. So you're going to learn how to thread a needle. This is me threading the needle. So we have the eye of the needle there. Just put the thread through. Now, if you're like me and your thread is fraying, I like to just wet it a little bit. Twist it up. Now, if it still looks frayed, then I'm going to cut a little bit off. Eye of the needle. There we go. So don't panic or feel frustrated if it takes you a few goes. Sometimes that just happens. Now I'm going to just lock it in by piecing it through itself. Usually I just leave a length of tail that's about the same length as the needle. Okay, needle locked in. Going to learn 3 different types of stitch methods for this one project. So there's the round hole stitch method and the oblique hole stitch method. Now the round hole is the easier of the two, and you can just buy complete round hole kit projects if you're really like truly first time beginner. For example, if you're a real true time first beginner, I would just pick the round hole project and just make a whole round hole bag, such as this Kelly, which I did before trying this Birkin. So this is the round hole stitch method. You can see if you're looking at the front piece, the round holes are actually quite visible and clear. And if you're looking at the back piece, the holes are less visible. But all you have to do for the round hole method is grab one needle, go through the hole, pull the stitch tight, grab your other needle, pierce the hole through the other direction, and pull that tight. There's no need to be creating a slant or concerned about creating a slant. I'll just do that again. Put your needle through the hole in one direction, grab your other needle, go through the hole in the other direction, and pull the stitch tight. And that's all you need to do for the round hole. It's much quicker, easier than the oblique hole stitch method. Now just to summarize, the round hole stitch method, super easy. You get all these even looking round holes, as the name suggests. You will have a piece of thread and one needle on each end, so that's 2 needles. You will pierce the needle through each hole with each needle, pull each stitch tight every time. Really easy, and they show you in their official tutorial video. And then you're going to learn oblique stitches, and there's going to be 2 methods. There'll be oblique stitch method 1 and oblique stitch method 2. That makes 3 stitch methods you'll be learning altogether. In oblique hole stitch method 1, the way I understood it from their official tutorial video is this is applied when you're either working with just one piece of leather and that one piece of leather has oblique holes, or you're working with 2 pieces of leather and only one of the pieces of leather has oblique holes. And the main aim with oblique hole stitch method 1 is to just produce slanted stitches only on one side of the leather. We're not too concerned with creating it on the back side of the leather. So I'm going to show you how I do oblique stitch method 1, which is just when you're creating a slanted stitch on really just one side. Like you might just be working with one piece of leather only, or you could be working with 2 pieces of leather, but you're not so concerned with creating a slant on the back side. Like for example, this has a round hole at the back and oblique hole at the front, and I'm only concerned with creating a slanted stitch on one side. So I'm going to start by bringing my needle through the back at the top of the slant, and then on the next hole it's going through on the bottom of the slant. Then the next needle is going to come through the back at the top of the slant, then it's going through the next hole at the bottom of the slant. Then the needle's coming through the back at the top of the slant, and the needle is going to go through the next hole at the bottom of the slant. Then the needle is going to come through the back. So it's really just top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. Then oblique stitch method 2 is when you're working with 2 pieces of leather and you are concerned with making sure the slanted stitching is showing on both the front and the back. That's how I understand the difference between oblique method 1 and oblique method 2, is that you're just concerned with either making slanted stitches on one side, as with method 1, or slanted stitches on both sides, as with method 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's how I understood it from their official tutorial video. Entering through this top left corner at the front, and I'm exiting through the bottom corner at the back. And I'm going to go back again. So now I'm going to go through that top corner. I'm going to enter through this top corner and exit through the bottom corner. So the idea is to get a slant on both sides. Now this needle, I will enter through the top corner on this side and then exit on the bottom corner of this side. So it's always top corner, bottom corner, top corner, bottom corner. Okay, so this is my progress so far with stitch method, oblique stitch method 2. So remember to keep everything in one direction, that way you get the same direction slant. Sometimes I get confused and I forget which way I'm going, so then my slants start going in different directions. And I do want to reiterate that with all the stitches, you do want to pull each stitch tight individually. For the round hole method, you can pull really tight. And for the oblique hole methods, you do want to pull them moderately tight. But sometimes pulling too tight actually makes the slant look straight and not slanted at all. But either way, you do want to at least give each one a nice pull individually. And with the stitches, you will also learn how to end the stitch by doing a back stitch or two, and also cutting the thread and burning it back. And specific to these type of return or retourné style bags, you'll be learning how to do piping. This bit that sticks out is called piping, which for me was a brand new skill, which I thought was really fun to learn. It was just absolutely priceless, this feeling of accomplishment I had once I finally learned how to do it. So let's get into some tips and tricks I have for you before you start. And these are from the lessons I learned from the mistakes I made. So hopefully you don't make the same mistake. Now, even though they provide everything for you in the kit besides the lighter or the matches, I did end up buying some extra tools to make this project even more fun and easier, and honestly, just to help save my neck and my shoulders. So first I got this stitching pony, and you can get this from anywhere, Amazon, Temu, wherever. I found this extremely helpful in terms of just making the whole project so much easier. There's different types of stitching ponies you can look into. This is just the one that I thought was best for me. I already mentioned these Leatherworks pins. I got mine gifted from Babylon, but again, you can buy them anywhere, Amazon, Temu, wherever. For all these extra tools, I will put links down below if you're interested in buying the same types that I have. These really help to hold the leather pieces together when you're sewing so that you don't get misaligned with your holes. I also bought these Leatherworks owls. These are used to help pierce my oblique hole to make them more visible, because I have really bad eyesight and these oblique holes are really difficult to see. So I thought these were really useful and really inexpensive. Now inside the kit, you get these rubber finger cots or rubber finger thimbles, but I also bought these extra metal thimbles. Now the two types of thimbles are used for different jobs. So the rubber finger cots or the rubber finger thimbles that you get in the kit, I use those to help pull the needle out, whereas the metal finger thimbles that I bought, these are help to push the needle through, and I had to use these several times. So I thought these were really inexpensive and very helpful as well. They really help to save your thumbs. And lastly, you may already have this at home, but a hammer or a mallet. And that's to be used at the end when you need to just smooth out these curved edges with the piping. These are just optional extras, no need for you to buy extra things, but I found these really helpful and made the project so much easier and more fun. Firstly, the oblique holes are really hard to see, so it's important that you do the project in an area with really good lighting, and if you have an owl, pre-poke the holes to make them slightly more visible to save your eyesight. Now they do provide an official Babylon tutorial video for you to watch, and it tells you how to put the project together. I really recommend watching the whole thing through once and then re-watching section by section as you go along. As I mentioned earlier, their tutorial video for this bag unfortunately did not have timestamps for the different sections. However, in this tutorial video, when I'm talking about each individual section, I have the timestamp not only for my video, but also for their official tutorial video. So that way you can find the relevant section in both videos to make your life much easier. Now, when you're doing this project, it is to be done slowly over a period of time. Don't feel like you need to rush yourself at all. There is no time frame. Just do it step by step, and the more time and care you take for each section, the better your bag's going to turn out. Now, when you make a mistake, not if you make a mistake, because a mistake's going to happen, don't panic. Stitches can be undone, sections can be restitched, contingency plans can be put in place. So it's really important to check your stitching every 5 stitches as you go. That way you can quickly pick up when you've made a mistake and you haven't left it too long, and you've still given yourself the possibility to either fix it or undo that section and redo it without having too much fuss. Do remember, this specific kit is the oblique hole kit. This is not the very basic beginner first time one. The very first time one is the round hole kit. This is for when people have done like a project or two and feel comfortable and want to try to upskill to oblique hole. Use pins or clips or safety pins or even needles to hold and align your panels together when getting ready to stitch. The better you have your alignment set up, the easier it's going to be and the less likely you're going to make a mistake, such as skipping holes or misaligning the holes completely. And mind you, that did happen to me when it came to the base, and I'll get into that later. And also, some pieces have what's called marking holes. Marking holes tend to be round holes, which are bigger than the other holes, and they tend to be on corresponding pieces of leather that's going to be sewn together. And that just helps with the alignment. So make sure that if the part that you're doing has marking holes, you pin those marking holes together first just to get the alignment set up. When working with really long pieces of thread, try to just pull the thread straight and smooth it out before starting, because thread can sometimes start curling on itself. So just smooth it out. It makes it so much easier. And when it comes to oblique stitches, in my mind, to help me keep track, so you're going from one hole to the next, and you're either going from the top to the bottom or you're going from the bottom to the top. And make sure you know which way you're going so you keep your slant in the same direction. But I'll get more into that when I'm showing you me actually doing it in each section. Now, if you're stitching together very stiff pieces of leather, or you're stitching through multiple pieces of leather, don't feel like you need to piece all the pieces together in one go. If it's too difficult, just use your needle and pierce one layer at a time. Sometimes that just makes all the difference in making the process less frustrating. When you're doing multiple pieces of maybe decorative stitches, you do want to make sure you're starting and ending your stitches at the same location to get a neat appearance. Otherwise, when you're doing decorative stitches, starting and ending in random spots, and it starts to look a little bit messy. Always even out the needle tail length. You don't want uneven needle tail length because that'll stuff you up later. Check out the Babylon Facebook group, where this is run by users of Babylon, customers of Babylon, not Babylon themselves, where everyone posts their completed projects, tips and tricks that they learned, and also you can ask each other for help. It is an amazing resource, and you can see photos of everyone's completed projects. So check that out before starting too, because they also show their pain points and how they overcame them. Okay, so now let's get into the steps. I do want to remind everyone, this video does not replace the official Babylon tutorial video, but rather just complements it because it shows you how I did things or the way I interpreted their directions, and in which sections I was a little bit confused by the directions given in their video and how I was able to overcome it. And also I provide you timestamps for their video because their video has no timestamps on the sections. And I will also be summarizing for each step what this name of the step is, what thread length I used, and give you the corresponding timestamp that matches their video so you can check out my video and their video at the same time. And I will tell you the pain points I experienced in each section and how I was able to overcome them. And hopefully that can help you as well. Step 1, sew decorative stitches on all the round holes on the panels, and this adds up to 14 decorative stitches altogether. In this section, we're using oblique stitch method 1. The thread length is 8 times the circumference of the hole. And before you start, I want you to decide where you're going to start the stitch on each hole so that you start in the same place on all of them and end in the same place on all of them. Because as you can see here, I forgot to do it on the first panel, so this one was all over the place. And then following that, they all started and ended in the same section. So it looked a little bit more professional there afterwards, but the first one was totally amateur. So this is oblique stitch method 1. It took me a little bit to get used to doing this, so my slants are not very good on my holes to begin with, but don't worry. That's just the reality of it. Your slants will start to get better and neater as you go along in the project, so don't stress too much. Just try to pick the holes on the side panels to do first because they're going to be less visible compared to the front and the back of the bag. So just do remember with the slanted stitches, sometimes you don't want to pull super tight. You do want to pull moderately tight, but sometimes pulling too tight actually ruins the slant and just makes it all look straight. So this is the final product of all 14 holes finally sewed. Make sure you're sitting in a well-lit area, and I found the stitching pony super helpful. So what do you think about my slant? Sometimes they don't look like they're slanting. Step 2, sew decorative stitches along the top edge. So in this section, we're using oblique stitch method 1. The thread length is 5 times the length of the top edge. Now they want you to start doing the decorative stitches through the first and second hole on the right side along the top edge. So they want you to start putting the needle through hole 1 and put the other needle through hole 2. Don't forget to even out your needle tail lengths before you continue stitching. And they also want you to put the needle from the back to the front. There, you're going to stitch across. Remember, we want to try to get that slant, and this is stitch method 1. So you're either going from the top of one hole to the bottom of the next, or you're going from the bottom of one hole to the top of the next. You always want to go to the opposite end diagonally to try to create a consistent slant. Don't forget to pull the stitches tight individually. This is just moderately tight because we want to try to keep that slant. Then when you get to the end, do a back stitch or 2 and burn it back. Then we are going to repeat it for the other side panel. Step 3, sew decorative stitches along the bottom of the flap. In this section, you'll be doing oblique stitch method 1. The thread length is going to be 10 times the length of the top edge. Now, before you start, there are a lot of curves in this section, and it is really easy to start getting confused as to which direction of slant you're going. So make sure you go slow, pay attention, and just keep in your mind, are you going from the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top? That way you can keep it consistent, because I personally started getting confused as it started curving. So the tutorial instructions say start by placing both needles through the first and second hole on the right side along the top up here. And they want you to go from the front to the back. So start by putting the needles through the front to the back, making sure you don't accidentally poke the other side of the flap or poke through the edge pane or anything that's existing there, because remember that is a flap there. And then from there you can start sewing across and down, and be super patient and slow and careful, because as I said, I got really confused. And just check your stitches every 5-6 stitches so you remember which way you're going and which direction your slant's going in. Finally, you will end up on the other side, the top edge on the left here, where you will cut it back and burn it back there. Again, needing to be careful not to affect or burn back or damage the leather on this side of the flap. Okay, step 4. Step 4, we're going to divide into 2 parts, 4A and 4B. 4A is just sewing this one stitch that holds the key, and the thread length we're going to be using is 1 times the length of this long bit here. And actually, we're only going to be using 1 needle this time. We don't even need 2 needles. And there's only 4 holes you're working with. 2 holes here, 2 holes here. You're going to bend it, and you're just going to stitch it like this. But these are really thick pieces you're dealing with, and because it's really thick, I'm going to just deal with 1 hole at a time. So first I'm going to start with this end piece here. So I'm sticking my needle through the hole on this end. Then I'm going to marry it up with the corresponding hole on the other end. Pull my thread through, leaving a decent tail. Now coming back through that hole, and I'm just going to put it through 1 at a time, then marry it up with the corresponding hole, pull that through. Now I'm going to use my fingers to physically press the 2 pieces of leather together. I'm going to hang on to this tail so that I can pull the stitch tight, and now I'm going to go through the holes. I have to go through 2 pieces of leather because they're pinched together now. See, now even though I have this tail, I'm able to pull my stitch tight. We're going to do this about 3-4 times. As it gets thicker, it's harder to push through, so I'm going to use that. See, I just use that just to help me push through without hurting my fingers. And then the finger cot helps me pull the needle through. So use whatever tools you have available to make your life easier. No need to struggle. So I've done 4 stitches there. So now we're going to cut this and burn it back. The tail is only about 3 millimeters. What I like about this particular kit is if your leather blackens from the lighter, the black part tends to just rub off. Whereas with my Kelly, it didn't seem to rub off. Now 4B is to sew the keybell. Now this is oblique stitch method 2 we'll be using here. And the thread length for each side, because we're going to have to do it twice, is 2 times the length of this long part here. Now I am having trouble seeing the holes on this one, so I'm going to pierce it with my owl. So to do the keybell, they do instruct you to pull this part all the way down to the bottom, and we're going to be stitching 2 rows. 1 row here, 1 row here. It is going to be the oblique stitch method 2. So they instruct you to start from the top, top, bottom, top, bottom. That's what I like to do with the oblique method. And because it's thick, I'm just going to do 1 piece of leather at a time. Top to bottom. So it's always top to bottom, top to diagonal bottom. And I always come through from the back. So if I just put this through the back, then this is going to be the first needle I come out through again. Top corner to bottom corner, and then the front one, top corner to bottom corner. Pull each stitch tight every time. Okay, I see slant on one side. I'm not quite slanting on the other side. So we got to do 1 back stitch, and then we can cut the thread and burn it back. So let's do 1 back stitch. That's 1 needle going back. Second needle going back. So they actually instruct you to have the tail sticking out between the 2. So I'm actually going to go back 1 more, but this time just exit through the middle and not go through both. So you can see my needles coming out there now in the middle. Same with the other side. I'm going to go back 1 more and now come out through the middle. Then they instruct you to tie a knot. I might just tie 2. They don't instruct you to do 2, but I'm just going to do 2. If it's too bulky, then I won't do it on the other side. Then they instruct you to cut a tail, burn it back. Okay, so maybe that was a mistake doing 2 knots. Maybe that was a mistake because it sticks out. But I'm going to use my owl. Okay, so that is 1 side done. So on the next side, I'm just going to do 1 knot, not 2. Step 5 is to assemble the 2 top handles, and we'll be using oblique stitch method 2. The thread length should be 4 times the length of the handle edge. So first you want to gather your pieces, the 2 leather pieces and the 2 rubber tubes. Each handle is 1 leather piece with 1 rubber tube. Now before you get started, familiarize yourself with the marking holes. The marking holes, as I said earlier, are bigger round holes, and they help you to line everything up before you start. Each handle has 4 marking holes, so you can get that lined up. Now the length of the tube they give you should be correct. However, the tutorial video does instruct you to double check the length, and it really should be from 1 marking hole on one end to the other marking hole on the other end. But as I said, technically you should already come correct, but just double check before you start anyway. So put the tube into the leather piece, starting at the marking hole. Use clips to help secure the edges together and start sewing from 1 set of marking holes. Don't forget to pull your thread tails even at the beginning and then sew all the way to the other set of marking holes at the end. Don't forget to pull each stitch tight individually, just moderately tight, because sometimes too tight will ruin the slant. Okay, so we finally got to the end of the first handle. Time to back stitch. That's the state of the stitches so far. What do you think? Slanted or not slanted? Does this side look any better? They don't actually show you in the tutorial how to finish this off. So I'm just going to do 1 more back stitch and then I'm going to go rogue. So I've done 2 back stitches, and then for the third one, I'm just going to exit through the middle and tie a knot like what we did with the clochette. I don't know if this is correct or not correct, but they didn't give any instructions. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Okay, so you can see it's coming out through the middle. Now I'm not actually going to burn this back because there's edge coat here and I don't want to burn the edge coat. So I'm going to tie 1 knot. Pull that tight. Tie 2 knots, pull that tight, and then tie a 3rd knot, pull that tight. Now I'm going to cut a tail. So now it's sticking out like that, which we don't want that to stick out. But I'm going to just use my awl and just shove it in without burning it back, because I don't want to burn the edge paint. If anyone knows what is the correct way to end the stitch here, please put it in the comment section. I don't know, this is just my contingency plan, because I didn't see any clear instructions. Okay, so that is the final look. So I ended up with 2 to 3 back stitches. So this is handle number 1. Then we have to repeat it for the other handle. Step 6. Now we need to sew the handle onto the bag. So we're going to have to do this for both handles. One handle will go on the front of the bag. One handle will go on the back of the bag. So what they did in the tutorial video was they lined up one, stitched that, then straightened out the handle just with their hands, and then lined it up on the other side. I kind of went a little bit rogue and I used pins to pin both sides of the handle down first, but that's up to you how you want to go about it. You don't really need too many pins to anchor it down as well, like maybe 2 or 3 pins on each side. And the side that you're sewing, you may have to take the pins out because it can be a bit obstructive as well. Now this part will be separated into 2 sections. Section A, which is sewing down these straight lines here, and then section B, which is sewing this diamond pattern here. Now for section A, which is just sewing the straight lines, the thread length you will need is 1.5 times the top edge of the bag. This part will use oblique stitch method too. So again, we're just talking about this straight line, this short straight line stitch going down this way. And before you get started, have your pieces aligned. Okay, so now we're going to take one of these handles and we have this really nice outline of holes here, and that's going to match up with the holes on the handle like so. Now the great thing is these are the round holes, which are really nice, easy to see and work with. And so even though these are the more difficult to see oblique holes, it's still going to make the whole job much easier. And because I have poor vision, I'm going to first put my owl through all the holes just to make it more visible. Okay, so I've just used 3 pins on each side just to hold things in place before starting. I think that's really going to help things make life a lot easier. The instructions tell us to do 1 stitch down the middle first, then do the outline stitch, and then repeat on the other side. And they want you to start from the back. Okay, let's just even out the thread here. Now I do want this to be stitched nice and tight. Okay, so what do you think? That's the back. Is that slanted? And that's the front. Does that look slanted to you? Not sure. Now to do the round part. Okay, so there's 15 holes on each side, on the front and the back, and the 15 holes does include the marking holes on the handle, the marking holes that we initially used to start sewing the handle together. So that includes the marking holes. So the first top holes actually line up with the marking holes. Again, there's a lot of curves here, so don't be too stressed if you end up getting confused as to which way you're slanting. That happens to me a lot on curved edges. Just go slow, check every 5 or 6 stitches to just check the consistency. And just remember, if you're going from the top of one hole to the bottom of the next, or if you're going from the bottom of one hole to the top of the next, that way you remember which direction you're slanting in. But even if you make a mistake with the slant, don't worry, we're novices. The official video also tells you the top of the handle needs to be reinforced because it is a stress point. It is taking a lot of weight. And I'll show you when I get into the video. I decided to go rogue and I actually decided to stitch across there on both sides and backstitch too, just to really make sure my handles can take the weight. So that I just did that on my own without the video. So I'm going to start on one marking hole, go around and end on the other marking hole. So I am going to use my stitching pony again, and I'm going to start from the back like the instructions say. So just like the part we just did just then, we're using a mix of round holes and oblique holes, and we just need to focus on getting the front part slanted. So I'm just going to put the needle through one piece of leather at the time at the beginning, just to make things easier and more visible. And I'm going to start with the marking hole. And I'm going to take my time because I need to go through the middle of the handle that I just sewed. Okay, so I've done one side. So what are you thinking of the slant? Do you think it's slanted enough? Or do you think it just looks straight? This is where I'm at the back. So I've even done the full loop because I really want to make sure it's secure. So I'm going to just do a back stitch and burn it back now. Okay, so that is the back of one handle. So I've stitched all the way around, so it's a complete loop. So hopefully that's strong enough to take the weight of the stuff I'm going to put in the bag, because the handles, they take a lot of stress. Okay, I'm going to do the other side. Step 7 is to make the inner pocket. The thread length is 4 times the side edge once you folded it. This is round hole stitch method, so this would be easier and quicker. Don't forget with the round hole, pull each stitch tight every time. You can pull pretty tight. Now, the official tutorial said there's no front or back. Both sides are the same. You just want to fold the piece up, but you'll notice there's a straight edge and a curved edge. You want to get that straight edge lined up with the 6 hole down from the curved edge. So I found it really helpful to use pins or clips or whatever to hold the edges in place. The instructions say start from the bottom where the fold is and then sew towards the top. Then back stitch and cut and burn it back on the back side. The back side is the part that's completely flat, not the side where there'll be the pocket. And then repeat this on the other edge. So step 8, now we need to attach this front pocket to the bag, and we'll be attaching it to the front panel on the back side of the front panel. Thread length, 4 times the length of the top edge. We'll be using oblique stitch method 1. The front panel has oblique holes. The pocket has round holes. Now we're going to sew the front pocket to the front piece of the leather, and it's going to line up in the center here, and it's going to start from the 8th hole from each edge. Okay, so that's pinned in place now. So I'm just going to start from one edge and go to the other edge. So these are oblique holes on the front piece, but round holes on the back piece. So we're going to use oblique stitch method 1. So with the oblique stitch method, I'm going to go top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom. So now I'm on the 8th hole. I'm now going to connect the front pocket to the front piece. And when working with 2 thick pieces of leather, if you need to, just poke through one piece at a time. You don't need to go through both simultaneously. Okay guys, so I have about this much left, but I feel like I'm running out of thread. Like the amount of thread I measured wasn't long enough, so I'm going to have to do a contingency plan because I don't think I'm going to make it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish that off. I'm going to backstitch, but I'm only going to backstitch through the back pocket because I don't want random back stitches through the front of the bag. Yeah, so guys, don't panic if you feel like, oh, something's not going to plan. There's always ways to, you know, fix things and have contingency plans. And if you're not sure, you can post it in the Babylon Facebook group, and then other people making Babylon kits can help you out, give you advice too. So I'm just back stitching through one layer only, which is the back pocket, the front pocket layer. See, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I just measured it wrong. Remember to take your finger cut off before dealing with the lighter. So I'm just going to burn it back inside here so it's not visible. And then I don't have any random back stitches on the front. So don't panic if things don't go right. Okay, so now I'm just going to get a new piece of thread to finish that part. Okay, so this is what it looks like on that back side where I did a back stitch. I did like 3 or 4 back and forward stitches through this one hole here, but you wouldn't even know from the front because I didn't interfere with the front. So I am going to overlap it through 1 stitch at the front. Remember to pull the thread tails evenly. So have the needles evenly and the thread tails evenly. Remember to pull each stitch with moderate tension every time. You want to have nice, tight, neat stitches, but not too tight. Sometimes when you pull it too tight, it just makes the stitch look straight and not slanted. But you want it tight enough so that it actually like holds firm and has structural integrity. That's where I overlapped the stitch from when I ran out of thread and had to get a new thread. So it's not super obvious. It is more obvious on the inside where I had to close the stitch, cut it off and burn it back. Okay, so that's how it's ended there. So now we have an interior front pocket sewn in that's attached to the top rim of the front piece of the bag. So when you open the bag up, you can throw things into the front pocket. That's the stitches from the back. So that's where I ran out of thread, had to back stitch and close it off and start again. And that's where we did the final close off. Alright, this is the front where I attempted to do oblique stitch method 1. What do you think? Is the stitches slanted enough? Or does it just look straight? Let me know what you think of my stitches so far. Do they look good or no? Step 9. We are going to sew these 2 leather pieces which contain the pre-installed feet to the base of the bag. The length is 12 times the length of the edge, and we'll be doing oblique stitch method 1. So the strips have oblique holes, but the base has round holes. I found it really helpful before starting to pre-poke all the oblique holes with my owl to make them more visible. I also did pre-pin these in place. You really don't need too many pins and also when you start stitching, the pins may be obstructive, so take them out as you go. So the instructions say start in the right bottom corner and then sew all the way around for each of them. Again, because these leather strips tend to be thicker and stiffer, don't feel like you have to force the needles through both this and this at the same time. Just go through one piece of leather at a time if you find that more helpful. So this is the completed product. So we have the 2 strips with the feet now firmly attached to the base. Step 10. Sew decorative stitches on both sangles. The thread length is 4 times the long edge of the sangles, and we'll be using oblique stitch method 1. Now for each sangle, we'll be sewing the top edge and the bottom edge. And then we have 2 sangles, so it's actually 4 lines of stitching we'll be doing all together. Again, before starting, I found it helpful just to pre-poke all the holes with an owl to make it more visible because I have bad eyesight. I also found it helpful that right as I'm getting up to the place where I need to attach the sangles to the bag, to pin them in place, and always paying attention to the direction of your slant so you can have it consistent. The instructions say to start your stitch at the first hole right next to this pre-installed hardware. You don't have to put the hardware on, it's already there. So for this part, we're going to attach the sangle to the back piece of the bag, and for each sangle we're going to sew a line of stitching on one edge, and then when we get to here, which is the 6th last hole from the end, at that 6th hole, pierce it but pause, because once you've pierced it, you do want to line it up with the holes here on the back of the bag, and then start incorporating it so you can start connecting them. That line of stitching is going to connect the sangle to the actual back of the bag, and then we're going to stop near the apex but just a little bit further, and then we're going to repeat on the other edge of the sangle and go around a little bit past the edge, a little bit past the apex, and then that way, by doing 2 stitches, we can cut them both off, burn them both at the back here, and the sangles on the stitches on the sangles will look nice and neat, and you won't see any back stitches or burning back on the actual sangle. I'm up to the 6th last hole now. We are now going to connect this to this. Remember, just go through one piece of leather at a time. It just makes things so much easier. Okay, I've now reached the apex. I'm just going to do one more stitch, then back stitch it, then cut it off and burn it. Okay, I'm going to cut it and burn it back. Okay, so that's one side done. So now I need to come back around the other edge and then also do the other side. Okay, so I have the sangles now sewn on both sides. And eventually they're going to be at the front like this. Step 11 is we are now going to do the piping strips that connect the side panel to the front of the bag. So we'll be doing this piping strip and this piping strip. You will need a thread length 5 times the length of the side edge. I used 6 and I'll tell you why later, but they recommend 5. So you can choose if you want to do 5 or 6. And you need to collect your items. So please collect 2 short piping strips. Leave the other 2 because they're going to be for when we do the back ones, and leave the long ones because that's for the base. So we just need 2 first. And grab that winded up piping cord. We will need to cut that. The great thing about the piping section is all round holes. So it's easier and you can pull really tight. And I would encourage you to keep in your mind in this section, you do want to pull each stitch tight every time, because the idea behind it is you don't want any stitches visible at all. So the tighter you pull, the less likely any stitches is going to show. This really should be invisible stitching when we look at it from the front, including the top there. We ideally want that to be invisible stitching as well. So don't forget to watch this section of the official Babylon tutorial video closely. So before we start, what I ended up doing was I went a little bit rogue with cutting my piping strip. I decided to just cut it from hole 4 from the top to hole 4 from the bottom and just cut exactly that length, because at the end that's the length you need. In the tutorial video they got you to cut a piece that's the whole length of the side and then trim it. I was like, what's the point of trimming it? Why don't I just cut it from the start to the finish of where I actually need it to be? First need the 2 outside pieces to face each other to make it into an inside out configuration. We need to line up the pieces. We're going to be working with the short piping strips and the piping tube. Now these we have to cut ourselves. Now for this part, if you go to the Babylon Facebook group, you can see that some of the Babylon crafters have actually talked about their own tips and tricks on little improvements and hacks that they've made to the instructions. So like if you think that the piping's too bulky, there's a lady there who's put a hack to explain how she improved it and made it less bulky. So have a look at the Facebook group first. You might find a hack that you like. So according to the instructions, I need to make this piping approximately the length of the side. However, I'm just going to pre-cut it 4 holes up on a diagonal now. When you cut the edges of the piping cord, they don't want a straight edge. They want a slanted edge. And do make sure you slant the 2 edges the same way, where there is a longer end and a shorter end facing me. It's at the top now. That's what you want, because if it's the other way, it could actually pierce through the piping and break it. So you don't want to do that. And that's because eventually we're going to lay the piping cord with the long end facing us. And the idea behind that is we want it to be flush against this part of the piping so it doesn't poke through and stab the piping. Okay, so we want to line up our pieces, and the instructions say to start from the top and then go to the bottom. So they want you to go from the first hole. Don't forget to even out your thread tails. They want you to wrap the thread around the first hole once along the top edge. This just helps to reinforce this stress point. And to be honest, from here, from hole 1 to hole 3, I went a little bit rogue. I actually stitched and then back stitched each hole and pulled super tight each time. In the tutorial, they don't tell you to do that. They just tell you to just stitch forward. But the reason why I stitched them back stitch, stitched them back stitch between hole 1 and 3 and pull tight each time is because when I didn't do it, I found the stitching was visible on the other side. So that's where I decided to go rogue. Remember to take care, go slow, pull each stitch tight every time. The goal is we want no visible stitches on this side. Okay, so now we get to hole 3. Now you want to insert the leather piping strip, then pierce through hole 3. So now we have 4 layers of leather to pierce through. You can pierce them through one at a time if you need to. Now we're at hole 4. This is where you will now insert your piping tube into the piping strip. Remember, we want to lay it so that that long edge of the slanted ends of the strip is facing us. And now let's continue sewing. So when I got to hole 5, I did just double check from the front again. How am I going? Is there any visible stitches? And then from there, you want to check every 5 to 6 holes as well. Pull each stitch tight every time. Use pins or safety pins or clips or whatever you have to hold all the pieces in place. We're working with a lot of pieces at the same time here. We don't want any stitches to show. We continue that until the 8th hole down. Now, as I said, I've already pre-cut my piping strip to stop at the 4th hole from the bottom. But if you haven't, and your piping strip goes all the way down, here at this point, you will trim it so that it lines up with the 4th hole from the bottom. And remember, slanted edge with the long part facing you. Now cut off any excess leather piping strip too. So where we want to cut it off is 1 hole down from the bottom. So you go to the bottom, leave 1 extra hole and then cut it from there because we're going to need that extra hole later. Now this is where it got a little bit confusing in the tutorial video. It said secure the thread on the inside, but then it didn't show where they backstitched or cut it back or burnt it off. So I just cut it back, backstitched, and then burnt it back on the side panel just to make it less visible. Okay, so I just finished this side. I just backstitched. And you also do need to trim the excess leather on the top of the piping here as well. I did try to use my awl to shove it in to make it less visible as well. Okay, so here's the finished product. So I think my piping looks pretty nice and neat. I don't think it's too bulky like what one of the people said in the Facebook group. I think that looks all right, but I could be wrong. I don't know what her thinner version looks like. So when you get to the end, just double check your piping, see if you're happy with it. If you're not happy with it, see what pain points you had so that you don't make mistakes on the second piping. And now do the second piping. And I tried to minimize the visibility of the stitching as much as possible here. I don't want any stitching showing, but there's like a teeny tiny amount showing. Step 12, we're going to do the same, but now we're attaching the side panels to the back of the bag and doing the piping strips. The thread length is going to be 5 times the length of the side edge. But again, I chose to do 6. And the reason behind that is, as I guys told you, I ended up double stitching along the top. So I needed extra length of thread. It's up to you if you want to do my rogue method or just follow exactly the tutorial video, but that's what I did because I really want it to be invisible. So that's the result I got, which I thought was invisible enough. So that's the back and that's the front. So I thought I was happy with that level of invisibility. So I was happy with my idea to backstitch along the top. Backstitch, forward stitch, backstitch, forward stitch. Pulling tight every time. Now gather the pieces you will need. So those 2 short piping strips that we have left over. Your piping cord. Again, I did the same thing where I went rogue and cut it from hole 4, from the top to hole 4 from the bottom of the side panel. I just pre-cut it that length. And before you start, they want you to thread the sangle into the hole just to get it out of the way. Otherwise, it's in your way. Now you want to start lining up your pieces and you will notice that this back piece is in fact taller than the side pieces. Now the 5th hole down from the back actually lines up with the 1st hole on the side. So hole 5 matches hole 1. That's your alignment. And then the 2 bottom holes should also align. So you want to have these pieces lined up and pinned together to hold your alignment. Again, the outside face of both panels should be laying on top of each other. Now you do have a flap in the way now with the back piece. So you want to start from the top hole of the back, being careful not to damage like the flap. And then you want to start sewing down The fifth hole is where it would now meet with the side panel. And from there is when I did my rogue method of stitching, back stitching, stitching, back stitching, 3 holes down, just like what I did with the front. When you get to the third hole is when you will incorporate the leather piping strip. And on the fourth hole is when you will incorporate the piping cord. Again, remember, you're going to cut the piping cord so that it has slanted edges, not straight edges. And you will lay the longer edge facing up, facing you, so it doesn't poke through the piping strip. And start checking every 5-6 stitches down to make sure you're happy with how it looks from the front, that there's no stitches visible. It's going okay so far, and very minimal stitching showing through here, which is exactly what I was going for. Okay, let's keep going. When you get to the 8th hole down, you can just pause there. Make sure your piping cord is lined up with the 4th hole, and you can now cut the bottom of the piping strip, leaving 1 extra hole down from the bottom. Just 1 extra hole and cut a straight edge from there. Okay, so all 4 walls are now attached to each other. Okay, so this is the finished product of the back binding. Now we have the 4 walls of our bag connected, but we are now in an inside out orientation. And that is how Hermes makes their retourne or retourne style bags. They're actually constructed inside out. And at the end, you push the bag correct side out. And so we are learning the basic steps of what Hermes artisans actually do. Obviously, we're not Hermes artisans and we're not doing it to their caliber, but we are at least getting the basic idea. Okay, step 13 is we are now going to connect this base to the 4 walls of the bag. Again, go really slow on this part and make sure you re-watch the tutorial video. This is round hole stitching method, which is great, which is easier. And the tutorial says use a thread length that's 3 times this. I actually used times 5. So I actually had to redo the base 3 times because of the following mistakes that I kept making. So number 1, I didn't pin them together properly. Even though there's marking holes for me to line up, I somehow misaligned them. And I ended up accidentally skipping holes on some of the pieces. So I had a misalignment and I had extra holes at the end. We are going to be working with 4 layers of leather at once with the piping tube. And then at the very end, it actually turns into 6 layers for the last couple of holes. So make sure you go really slow and pay really good attention to poking through each one of them one by one. Consult the Babylon Facebook group for tips and tricks about the base. And I actually employed some of those, such as putting a cardboard box into the bag to hold the base up and in shape, and also pre-sewing the inner piping strip. So just to reiterate, the measures I put in place to finally get the corners right were I pre-pinned the marking holes and pre-pinned some corner positions to hold it all in place. And I followed the tutorial of skipping the first hole on the side panel. The first hole is the one that's already pierced by the vertical piping. Skip that one and go straight to the second hole. And also keeping everything positioned by placing a box in the bag. Okay guys, so we are going to try the hack that I got from the Babylon users Facebook group. So this is the Facebook group run by the customers of Babylon. And one of the tips was to pre-sew this inside piping to keep all the pieces in place. I'm going to try it. Which I'm still not sure if I like that tip or not. It made it easier, but then it presented some problems. So I don't know if you want to do that or not. Where it made it easier was the stitching easier, but where it made it harder was I was not able to undo stitches because all the threads intersected and tangled up. And also it left me with some visible stitches on the inside of the piping. So there are pros and cons to pre-stitching the inner piping, which I'll let you decide if you want to try it or not. But they're the 2 tips I got from the Babylon Facebook group, which was put the box in the bag, which I loved that tip to hold everything up, and then pre-stitching the inner piping, which I'm not sure about. So watch and re-watch this section of the tutorial before starting. It's now time to connect the base to the 4 walls of the bag, and because this is a retourne or retourne style, we are still constructing the bag inside out. And we will at the end, push the bag right side out. Now this part is going to be quite in-depth because it is going to be a bit complicated. So the pieces we'll be working with are the base of the bag, the body of the bag, the two long leather piping strips, and we will be working with both of these simultaneously, and finally the last bit of the piping cord. So just to summarize before we get into it, the overall picture that we're trying to achieve is connecting the base to the walls of the bag, and in this connection what we will have is a piece of piping folded in half, and this will be between the wall of the bag and the base, which is the same as how we did the vertical piping. So we're going to have these, and that's going to form 4 layers of leather. And then, just to make it more fun, we are going to wrap this whole thing in another leather piping strip, making it a 6-layer simultaneous sewing. So that is the overall picture. These are all round holes, luckily, so we're using the round hole stitch method, which is quicker and easier to deal with compared to the oblique hole. And what I love about the round hole method is they give you marking holes. So marking holes are bigger and more obvious compared to the other holes. So that's a marking hole there. You can see it's slightly bigger and more obvious than the others. And marking holes have a corresponding marking hole on the other piece it matches up with, which is this one. And because we are constructing the bag inside out still, we want to make sure that the outside surface of each of the pieces are going to be facing each other. And then that way I know I'm starting from the correct spot. So they want you to start from the back piece, and the back piece is the one with the flap, that's how you know. So regarding the thread length, what they recommend is it is going to be way too long of a thread to measure out one huge piece of thread that's going to allow you to sew the whole base. So what they instruct you to do is measure out a piece of thread that's 3 times the length of the bag flattened from this edge to this edge, times 3, and then when you run out, they will teach you how to sew over the top to connect the stitches, because it's easier to deal with a shorter piece of thread and continue connecting stitches together. But I'm going to go a little rogue, and instead of doing a length of 3, I'm going to do a length of 5, and I'm going to work with that. Only because I want to give myself extra thread length in case I want to do any rogue back stitches or something goes wrong and I need extra length. So the great thing about it is you're not actually starting from the marking hole, which means you can have that pinned, and you're actually starting 3 holes to the right of the marking hole. And so what I'm going to do is slowly get my pieces ready, and I'm going to just go slow and stab through one piece at a time. Now the tutorial recommends you just check the edges of the leather strips that they provided. Make sure they're straight. If they're not, straighten them up with the scissors, but that looks straight already. This one looks like it could use a little trimming. You can see here, it is straight, but it's actually cut into what would have been the hole above. So I might just cut that little bit off because I don't need that hole above, that half a hole above. And they want straight ends on the piping cord. So I've already got one straight end here. Maybe I'll just try cutting it more straight, and then I'll do the other end when I get to it. So we are starting from hole number 3, and that's hole number 3 on all the pieces. This will be the piping that wraps around the whole edge. So I'm going to start with this one. So I'm going to poke through on hole number 3, then come to my base piece. Here it is. Go to hole number 3. Then this is the piping strip, which will go on the inside, which will be folded in half. So hole number 3, this has to be folded. Hole number 3 again. I'm going to pull my needle through, go through hole number 3 on my back piece. Layer 5 is now the back panel, still hole 3. And finally, the 6th and last layer is now the other side of the piping strip, which wraps around the whole edge, or the outside piping strip. So that's all 6 layers. So let's just look at them again here. This is the outside piping strip, or the one that'll be wrapping around the whole edge. That's layer 1. Layer 2 is the base. Layer 3 and 4 is the folded inside piping strip. Layer 5 is the back piece, and layer 6 is the other side of the outside piping strip, which wraps around the whole thing. This is my first stitch. I'm going to even out my thread tails. Now I can't pull tight quite yet because I'm just working with so many layers. Now I'm going to start the second stitch, and I'm just going to focus on putting one needle through all the layers again. Okay, so from the 4th hole, we are now going to insert the piping cord, which is the same as what we did with the vertical piping strips. We put the piping cord in on the 4th hole. This now has a straight edge, not a slanted edge. They instruct you to pull the piping cord out a little bit, so it sticks out a little bit there. Now I'm going to put this into the stitching pony and continue sewing. Okay, we're about to do a corner. Bear in mind, I've got this pinned in place here. So this is the back panel of the bag. This is the side panel of the bag. The instructions say for the back panel, we go all the way around. But once we reach the side panel, we need to skip the first hole, and that is the hole which is already pierced when I did the side piping. Skip that hole and jump to the second hole. However, we only skip the hole on the side panel. All the other layers, such as the piping, the back panel, and all that, we do not skip any holes. So we're purposely skipping one hole on the side panel of the bag only. That is the overall picture we're trying to achieve. We have now finished piercing through the last hole on the back layer. We're now turning the corner and ready to pierce the side panel. As per the instructions, we need to skip the first hole, which is the hole right here. This hole, you can tell because it's already been pierced by the vertical piping. We are going to skip that. We are going to go all the way here to the second hole. However, this is the only layer in which we're going to skip a hole. All the other layers, we will not be skipping a hole. Okay, pretty good actually. You can see it in that corner there. So it's actually looking pretty good. So I think I've finally done the corner correctly on the 5th go. So just to reiterate, the measures I put in place to finally get the corners right were I pre-pinned the marking holes and pre-pinned some corner positions to hold it all in place. And I followed the tutorial of skipping the first hole on the side panel. The first hole is the one that's already pierced by the vertical piping. Skip that one and go straight to the second hole. And also keeping everything positioned by placing a box in the bag. So they are the 4 measures I put in place to get the corners right. The one from Babylon was skipping the hole on the side panel. And then the other 3 tips, pinning things in place, pre-stitching the piping, and putting the box, all came from the Facebook group from the other users. So thank you so much. Okay, now let's keep going. Okay, pretty good actually. You can see it in that corner there. So it's actually looking pretty good. So I think I've finally done the corner correctly on the 5th go. Just double check your alignment. So count from your marking hole on the side back. Do you have even number of holes on the base versus the bottom? If you have even number of holes, good, your alignment's good. If you no longer have even number of holes, something's gone wrong. Now you may need to undo and start again, because you may not be able to figure out where you've accidentally skipped a hole and lost alignment. And this is a problem I ran into, hence I redid it 3 times. Step 14, we now have a completed bag, but it is constructed inside out. So we need to now push it correct side out. So starting from the long edge, the 2 corners, slowly start pushing them out and try to do it in a continuous manner. With your fingertips, slowly push the corners, being careful of your nails, making sure you don't scratch up the bag. Push out the bottom of the bag, and then you can push the other way. Now once it's all out, with the edges, you can either use just your fingers to keep squeezing the edges to flatten it out, or if you have a mallet, a rubber mallet, or a hammer, wrap the hammer in a cloth and just try to hammer the edges to make them flatter and straighter. It just helps with the shaping of the bag. Same for the base. Either use your fingers or a mallet or a hammer that's wrapped in a cloth. Okay, now we're at the home stretch. We're just going to start putting the bag together. So now thread the sangles through the holes. Step 16, sew decorative stitches around this square here. This is 3 times the long edge of the flap. Oblique stitch method 1. And finally, step 17, dress your bag up with the clochette and key. And if you want to use the rodeo or the twilly, do that as well. I don't use those, so I'm not going to put them on. Here's my clochette. Here's my lock. I don't actually use those. I'm going to end up taking them off. So final thoughts of the bag. I have actually been using this bag for the past week to go to work, so it is very functional. Like, I'm not a handheld only person. It was the fact that it has a crossbody strap that made it functional for me. And also, one thing I don't like about the straps is they don't have a strap keeper. I don't like this. Maybe you're like me, but this is a pet peeve of mine, so don't really like that. And I just feel so proud that I was able to make this bag myself with my bare hands. I know it comes as a DIY kit, pre-cut and stuff, but still, this is a huge achievement for me. And I'm really loving this color as well. Now, when I do compare this to this bag, now this is not an Hermes Birkin, this is a Bablyon of Switzerland vintage Birkin-Style bag. But when I compare a professionally made bag made by professional artisans to mine, I mean, there is a clear difference between their craftsmanship and mine. But hey, mine doesn't look half bad next to theirs. So even though this is made better, I'm still proud of mine. So let me know if you decide to try this kit. Put it down in the comment section if you tried it, what color you chose, and which hardware.